How many of you go to bed with me at night? Yes. See, that's one of the reasons people feel they know me so well, is they sleep with me night after night after night. You know, Ken Carey, in his new book, The Third Millennium, said something that I thought was so beautiful. He said, "The warm rains of new thought fall gently on the soil of human consciousness." It's not as though this new consciousness-raising movement that's going on is a big storm or battering at people's doors. It's that it's like a gentle spring rain, and as it falls, it awakens the soil, and little blades of grass are raising everywhere on the planet. Look at us here, a sea of spring grass, awakening souls. Now, for some of you, I may say some revolutionary things today, and for others who've been on the pathway for some time, it may just reconfirm what you already know. But it's a glorious time that we're living in, and wonderful new things to learn, new understandings to have of our human consciousness. You know, deep at the center of our being, there is an infinite well of love, an infinite well of joy, an infinite well of peace, and a place within us where we are totally connected with infinite wisdom. These are the treasures that are within us, and they're only a breath away. So just for a moment, I'd like you to close your eyes and come with me. Let's go to that place within you where there is infinite love, where you can see life through unconditional love. And the more love you share and give, the more will return to you. So feel that love and let it grow and expand. Now come with me to that place where there is indescribable joy bubbling, where you see the joy of life at all times. And let yourself feel that joy within you. And feel it grow and expand. And then come with me to that place within you where there is deep, serene peace, as quiet as a mountain lake, where the outside world cannot touch you. And feel that peace. And then come to that place within you where there is infinite wisdom, where all the answers to all the questions you will ever ask are already within you, where whatever it is you need to know will be revealed to you. These are the treasures within you. And as you open your eyes and come back to this room, keep remembering that you have these treasures. Do we use them once a day, once a week, once a month, once a year? Or do we totally forget that we have these within us? You see, when we use the treasures that are within us, we will get to drop a lot of the burdens that we carry. burdens like anger and rage and shame and guilt and prejudice, judgment. We will not need to create illnesses any longer. And I really think we can begin to reverse the aging process, because it is burdens that age us. So I'd like to ask you that once a day or twice a day, first thing in the morning and last thing at night, you stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes and say, I am filled with unconditional love, and I share it today. I am filled with indescribable joy, and I feel it today. And I am filled with deep, serene peace, and I experience it today. And I am connected with infinite wisdom. And I listen for those answers. I receive those answers today. Because this is the truth of your being. And people who declare the truth can literally change the world. I know it sounds simplistic, it's repetitive, and it is very powerful. We have so much within us that in times past we have not been taught to use. But what is happening now is we are learning the power of our minds and what this can do for us and how it can literally transform our lives. I am not a healer. I do not heal anyone. I am a teacher who shares ideas with people. And like most good teachers, I too have had many, many dark nights of the soul. And many of us good teachers have come through very, very difficult childhoods. And we have learned to heal the past and release the past. And that is why we are able to help you do the same thing. Because we cannot create a glorious future or a wonderful today if we are in bondage to the past. Remember, forgiveness is healing our wounds of the past. In my own life, as far as I know, my life was very wonderful till I was around 18 months old. And then my parents divorced, and I went into a series of foster homes. My mother was an uneducated woman, and she needed to work as a domestic, as a servant in someone's house, and was not able to take me. So I went to a series of foster homes, and life was very difficult for me. And then when I was about 5 years old, she remarried because she wanted to make a home for me. But unfortunately, she married a very abusive man. So life became a different kind of hell at that point for both of us. And around the same time when I was 5, I was raped by a neighbor. And I remember being told that it was my fault and that I was shaming the family. But nevertheless, there was a court case, and the man did go to jail for 16 years. But I was very scared during my childhood that at some point this man would come out and punish me because I had put him in jail. And when I was in my early teens, then in addition to the physical abuse I was handling, there began to be sexual abuse from my stepfather. And when I was just about 15, I thought that was enough, and I left home and went out into the world. Only unfortunately, because of my upbringing and because of the fact that we were so poor and I had been abused so much, my self-worth and my self-esteem was literally under the stage, under the building. I had none. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem, and no social skills at all. And because I was so very, very starved for love in those days, if a young man would put his arms around me, I would go to bed with him. And so within a year, I had a little baby girl. And it amazes me sometimes when I look back now and think that I was able at that age, which is with as little as I knew, to find her a really good home with a really good family. And once she was 5 days old, I left her life and I have never seen her. When I look at that from my perspective of today and my understanding, I see that that little girl had to get to that family, and I was the vehicle to take her there. And because of my belief in my lack of self-worth, it was one more experience of shame that I needed to prove to myself how terrible I was. You know, we talk a lot about teenage pregnancy and how terrible it is. But what many people don't seem to realize is that no young woman, no young girl with self-worth and self-esteem would allow herself to get pregnant in the first place. We must fill our children with self-confidence and self-worth so that they are able to handle the challenges that life brings them. If you fill them with fear, they become powerless and they do not know how to heal. So I went on with my life, but because of my belief in myself, my beliefs about life, I attracted many abusive men and many menial jobs. And it took a long time before I could begin to turn that around because I had no self-worth. However, in time, things began to change. And I remember at one point, I married in my late 20s, I married a wonderful Englishman. He taught me social skills, and it was a very nice period of my life for about 14 years. And then one day he wanted a divorce. And of course, I was totally devastated because once again, I was saying, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I can never do it right. But I didn't realize at the time that life was really giving me an opportunity to move into a new phase. And while it was very difficult for me for some time, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And my teacher appeared in the form of a class. A friend said to me, I'm going to a lecture tonight, would you like to come with me? And I went. And it literally began the turning point of my life. I was in my early 40s, and these people told me that if I was willing to change my thinking, I could change my life. And it was the most important thing that I think I have ever heard in my life. And while I didn't know what they were talking about and didn't really know what they meant, something inside of me said yes. And so I started to go to classes and read books and listen to tapes and make notes furiously and study. I, who had been a high school dropout and had never studied anything in my life, suddenly found a subject that absolutely fascinated me, the way my mind worked and the influence it had on my body and on my life. So I was studying away, and time passed, and my life started to change. I was doing affirmations and making some progress, and I started to get what I call the green lights in the parking places, when the little things in life start to work for you. And I thought I was pretty hot stuff. And I was in those days. I was doing well. And after a time, I got to a point where I began to teach what I knew and work with people on how to help them change their consciousness, to change their lives. And then one day, I was diagnosed with cancer. And just like anyone else who is diagnosed with cancer, I went into total panic. I was absolutely petrified. But I did have something on my side. I had tools to work with because I had worked with other people. And at that point, I knew that the mental equivalent for the disease called cancer is resentment. Deep, old resentment that literally eats away at the body over time. I remember calling my teacher and saying, "They say I have cancer." And he said to me, "Louise, you cannot have done all the work you've done on yourself to die of cancer. Now let's take a positive approach." And I remember clinging to that statement. And I began to do all the things I could figure out to do to handle this. I knew that if I would have the operation that they said I must have, and I didn't clear the mental pattern that was contributing to this disease, then they'd just keep cutting Louise until there was no more Louise left. You see, I don't believe that doctors don't get it all out. I think that we contribute to a condition in our bodies. We go have an operation, we come back, and we live life in exactly the same way. We don't change our thinking, we don't change our habits, we don't change our attitudes. And of course, the condition comes back. So I remember doing a lot of praying, a lot of affirmations, a lot of visualizations. I used to visualize several times a day cool, clear water flowing through my body, washing out the diseased cancer cells. I also went to a good nutritionist, and this person helped me detoxify my body, take the negative junk out of my body that I had so unknowingly eaten for so many years. And then I also went to a good therapist and detoxified my mind of the junk thoughts that I had been carrying around for so very long. This was a therapist who was able to help me release the angers and the resentment that had to have been within me from having carried that for so long. But one of the most important things that happened was that I learned about forgiveness from a personal point of view. I realized that my stepfather, who was so abusive, was once born a beautiful, innocent little baby, like all of us. So the story was how to figure out he got from that point of a baby, a beautiful baby, to the place where he would be so abusive. And I began to explore his childhood, and I realized that he was also a highly abused child. In fact, he had a twin brother who was so traumatized by the family experience that he went into an institution and never came out. Now, this was not to condone his behavior. It was not to say that what he did was okay, but it was to have some understanding on why and how it could have happened. And as I began to understand, I was able to begin the forgiveness process, which was not for him, but it was for me. It was time to heal my wounds. And in 6 months of absolutely intense concentration and doing everything I could think of the right thing to do, I remember, I know I had more to eat, but it seems that the only thing I can remember is sprouts and pureed asparagus. But I did all these things, and all of them combined. Within 6 months, I was able to get the medical profession to agree with what I already knew, that I no longer had cancer. And this was an extraordinarily powerful experience for me, because I began to realize that if we're willing to do the work, and many of us are not. You know, there are lots of people who would rather die than change their diet. and they do. But if we're really willing to do the work, almost anything can be healed. I have spoken since, or many people who have come through cancer have said to me, and I've heard this over and over again, that it was probably the most powerful experience of their life because it gave them the opportunity to change. And by changing, they not only healed their body, but they healed their lives. So this was a very big thing for me. And I went forth, I continued to go forth and to teach and share my experiences with others and help them learn how to release their own traumas. And today, I live a totally different life than I ever have before. My thinking is completely different. Abusive men do not know I exist. I'm no longer sending out those signals. And I rejoice in all that is going on in my life. I'm in my 69th year now, and I'm going to be 70 in October. And among other things, I'm becoming very interested in how we age and why. And I know that at the moment, we're in the process of a lot of evolutionary changes. See, life comes in waves and learning experiences and evolutionary changes. And we're in a large period of evolution now. And I see my own work now moving in two directions. One, to work with women and really bring them up to where they belong. And the other is to work with elders. And seeing that we do not have to age in the way we used to age. See, it's all consciousness, it's all belief systems, it's society belief systems and our individual belief systems. But these are only thoughts and customs, and they can be changed. I know that many of you in this audience today have read some of my books, or listened to the tapes, or have read other books and tapes, and have taken responsibility for your life and have made changes. See, first of all, I really want to help the women. I want to see that all women have self-love, self-worth, and self-esteem. You know, it's interesting. Up until the 1970s, the only ending you ever put with the word self was like selfish. And for centuries, if anyone wanted to do any work on themselves to improve their own life, they were told they were selfish, and therefore they couldn't do it. But in the 70s, when we began to have a change in consciousness, we began to realize that we must all have self-love, self-worth, and self-esteem if we're really going to make a difference in our lives. And I think that when women have this, they will take a powerful place in society. You see, for centuries and centuries, women have been under the whims and the belief systems of men. And it is time that we start being powerful in our own way, in our own lives. I think inner self-worth is the most important thing that a woman can develop. It is absolutely vital to our well-being. Because when we have self-worth and self-esteem, we will no longer accept positions of abuse or an inferiority. We will not do that. Women have been brainwashed for centuries into certain kinds of behavior in order to be good women. And I know that there are many women that go around in deep resentment at the roles they feel forced to play. And many times Illness is their only way to get a rest. Some people would even die to get rest. And I think it's time we stop that. But you see, no matter where we came from, no matter what the family rules were, no matter how abused we were as children, we women can learn to love and cherish ourselves today. The same thing goes true for men, but I'm talking about women right now. You see, because when we learn to love and cherish who we are, then as mothers, as women and mothers, we will automatically pass this on to our daughters and our daughters' daughters and their granddaughters. And our daughters will no longer accept abuse, and our sons will have respect for everyone, including all the women in their lives. And as women have self-esteem and pass this on to their children, then their children and their children's children will not need to go through the diminishment and the self-abuse and the abuse that so many women go through now, and our mothers have gone through, and our grandmothers and their grandmothers. It is time to make changes. Now, I am not again to male bashing at all, putting men down, because I don't think that that's a good thing to do in any way. That if women blame men for their problems, then we're only going to be stuck, because a victim is always in a powerless position, and blaming others keeps us powerless, keeps us stuck. I have tremendous compassion for men, because men too are stuck in their roles, and they carry enormous burdens and a lot of problems. You know, when you think of it, little boys are taught not to cry and not to have feelings. And to me, this is a form of child abuse and torture, because we are meant to have feelings. We all have tears so that we can use them. And also, you know, if you really want to see a man cry, give him a very safe space to be, and let him talk about the relationship he has with his father. So many times you will hear the regret and the sadness for what might have been and wasn't, and all the things that could have been said, and the many times they wanted to hear "I love you" and didn't. So we all carry our burdens and our problems. I think we need to put together something called Every Woman's Successful Guide for Living, which will be a guideline for women on how to think about themselves and how to feel. And it will create a new paradigm for women. I think it's important that we strengthen the ties between women all over the planet, and support and encourage each other in every way that we can. Because remember, if you discourage another person for anything, that discouragement will come back to you in some way. But if we support and encourage each other, then life in turn will support and encourage us. The other thing that I want to do is to work with elders. I almost see creating a movement called Elders of Excellence. I don't know how it is here, but in the States, we're a big youth culture, and we don't think a whole lot of our elders. But you see, all of us get older, so we're setting up what it's going to be like for ourselves when we get older. See, I think it's time that we begin to break the current stereotypes on aging. We need to totally revise our thoughts about aging, what society thinks and believes. Longevity has been changing for quite some time now. You know, in the Roman times, we only lived till our late teens. It was like we reproduced and we were on our way out. And even in 1900, the longevity, the life expectancy for people was 49 years. And in 1 century, we have moved it up to around 80. Well, if we can do that in 1 century, why can't we move it up to 125 or 150? It's all just a concept. Science is beginning to discover that there may be absolutely no limits to how long we can live. You know, they did a study in a university a few years ago in the States on middle age, and they discovered that at whatever age you believed middle age to be is the time when your body starts deteriorating. And if you believe that 40 is middle age, then you're going to start going down. If you believe 50 is middle age, that's when you'll go down. But what if you believed that 75 was middle age? What a difference that would make. See, the body has to follow the thoughts in the mind. It has to. The thoughts we think and the words we speak are incredibly powerful. So we're in the middle of enormous evolutionary changes right now. Women rising to power and elders living much, much longer lives. You see, we're all going to grow older, all of us. But we have choices on how we do this. The only people who won't grow older are the people who die. But if we grow older, do we want to age happily or do we want to age miserably? You know that expression that, oh, I'm too old to do this. Well, I think very soon that's going to be totally outmoded as we find that we can do all sorts of things we thought we couldn't do in the past. They did something in Pennsylvania just recently, again in a university. They took a group of 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds and started giving them weightlifting training. And they found that they could revitalize their bodies. You know, so much of the disability that goes with old age comes from years of not using our bodies, just sitting or shuffling across the room. And by having weightlifting exercises, their whole bodies were revitalized. And they noticed that the 90-year-olds, in 2 months, they could triple their strength. Well, you know, when you start to feel that you have power again, it does wonderful things for your mind. It's youthening on every level. And there's a group of women in Dallas, Texas. They call themselves the Steel Magnolias. And they're 65 to 85. And they're a karate group. And they go around and do karate demonstrations to show people what women of any age can do. And I tell you, if a mugger ever approached any of those women, they'd be in trouble, because those women know how to handle themselves, including the 85-year-old. And it was very interesting that the trainers said that the most difficult thing to teach the women were not the movements, but the voice. That when they made a movement and they had to go, ha! That was very difficult for the women to learn, because they weren't used to using their voices with power. But once they got it, that was different. And I was reading, I think it was just a week ago, there's a 91-year-old pilot who has a small newspaper. It's in the West somewhere. And they produce a weekly edition. And every week he gets in his airplane with all the newspapers rolled up, and he goes to the outlying farms, and he has the papers next to him, and he picks them up, and he flings them. And he says, I can get it on the porch every time. You see, we are only limited if we think we are limited. There are always people doing things that we think we can't do. The brain does not wither and die unless we stop using it. We have to keep stimulating ourselves and keep moving and keep exercising. You know, I expect to live a very long time. I figure I've got at least 30 more years of work to do, and I want to be in good shape. It's the only way I'm going to do it. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I eat as well as I can. When I'm home, I grow my own food. I eat lots of vegetables. I want to take care of myself mentally and physically so that I can keep moving with agility to my very last day. You know, they've done a lot of research on elders, but unfortunately, it's all been on sick people. What's wrong with people? And I think it's time that we start doing some in-depth studies on older people who are happy, healthy, fulfilled, and really enjoying life. Because when we study these people, then we will learn how we can all do it. Unfortunately, pharmaceutical companies do not make money on healthy people. So somebody else is going to have to do the research. You see, soon we're going to have more older people than we've ever had before, and it's time that we reshape our thinking. We must reshape our thinking and everything concerned with that. We've got to sort of unplug ourselves from society's concept of aging, the current concepts. We must, because I think that we can make the second half of our life even more wonderful than the first. But we must create a conscious ideal of what this is going to be so that we can aim for it. You see, too many people equate age with poverty and sickness and loneliness and being frail. And if we look around us and see a lot of that, that is because this is what we have created by our past belief thinking. Remember, today, you are always living and experiencing what you believed yesterday and last week and last month. But what you are choosing to believe and think today will create tomorrow and next month and next year and your future. So we can always make our changes now. But